Good evening, everyone. Am I co-host yet, Mary? Thank you so much. Great to see all of you. Well, I think we'll wait until the end of the sitting for a meet and greet. Just a quick hello, that is. But since we are here, let's just start sitting or continue sitting, but maybe ease yourself into a more comfortable, upright posture. Take a few intentional breaths to help you find your body, find this point of life that you're at here now. And then to widen the scope of your aware presence, let your eyes close softly. Move gently beyond the experience of the breath to the shape and the form of your sitting body. And while you're feeling the contours of the body, just fill in all the spaces within the edges with the quality of aliveness or vibration, just sensing what a body feels like. The way it's animated with life, with spirit, breath. Just notice how the body draws breath and then releases, all by itself. Just gently, lovingly receiving the body's experience of breathing. Letting the whole body be filled with this life breath. Noticing how wherever your attention goes, that part of the body, the feeling is enhanced, enlivened. The top of the head, the neck and shoulders, the arms, the torso, the pelvic area, the legs from the thighs to the tips of the toes, arms. Our mind is facile, is flexible, non-locatable, can go anywhere. But now we let our attention fill our body. We let our body fill our attention. Noticing how attention and body coming together just naturally produces a stilling, a steadying. Just enjoy the stillness, the putting down of the burden of going, of becoming, of having been someplace, just settling in to this timeless present. Just stepping out of the rush of time, settling back into the moment. And then finding that point of contact in the body again. It feels like a supportive anchor for your attention, a place to come back to, a place to refine and steady. For many, it will be the gentle movements that the body makes with each breath. For others, it will just be the whole body sitting. For others, it might just be a sense of simply being aware. Whatever allows you to anchor your attention here. I'll comment a little more on working with the breath. The breath is just one object of meditation. If you're working with the breath, you may notice it most clearly at the nostrils, or at the chest or belly, or the sense of the whole body gently expanding and contracting. Feel free to enjoy this experience of breath, to sink into it, to stick to it, to spread out all around it, to not miss any part of the in-breath, the out-breath. As the body empties, enjoy that empty space. Enjoy the feeling of the whole body and that gap between the breaths. However it is that you experience the in-breath, the out-breath, and the space between the breaths. When sounds come, just notice hearing. When other sensations come, notice their quality. Notice how they behave. When moods come, notice their behavior. No need to figure anything out, just feel what is being felt. Feel the mind when it's spacious. Feel the mind when it's contracted. Feel the heart when it's sad, fearful, excited, calm. And notice with appreciation the magic of the thinking mind, the way the thoughts come unbidden. They float through our mind like clouds. And cling to nothing. Don't cling to thoughts, feelings, sensations, and breath. Everything is changing. And freedom comes from letting it be, letting it go, just as it is, just this moment. Remembering that this is not just a means to awakening or enlightenment. This is enlightenment itself. Just being aware. Just this moment. When you realize that there's been unawareness, drifting along in a dream, memory, fantasy, this is a moment of mindfulness, a moment of comprehension. You're now awake again, aware of the creative opportunity to plant the seed of safety and presence, kindness. We do it by bringing our attention into our body, noticing the presently arising experience, knowing that attention brings affection, brings a love of truth, caring about what you notice, interest. Just this moment of awareness. What are you aware of? Whatever you're aware of is the right experience. Notice at this point in the sitting whether you're just getting through, waiting for something to happen, waiting for the end. Just notice this space, this state of waiting. Let it remind you of your love of being right here in this moment with this very experience. Letting go of time, of waiting, becoming, waiting, letting go of getting through. Just this moment with things just as they are. So good evening, everyone. Those of you who drifted in during the sitting, I saved our hellos to now, so feel free to unmute and say good evening to each other. And it may be helpful if you include your face too. I see some shining faces, and I think that's a gift to all of us. So please feel free to unmute, show your face, and say hey.
Hi, everybody.
Hey everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hey. Hello. Good to see you all.
Do I have my sound off? I have my sound off. So sorry.
No, we hear you.
We hear you. Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Hello.
It's full.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
There's that.
I'm looking for something that I wanted to read. Too late. Now something has happened to my screen. Okay, there you are. I think I will launch right into a few thoughts that I had today. I had a day that was in some way filled with Dharma. And I've felt very blessed over these last few days of having more Dharma in my life. I had a lovely half-day retreat with the Sangha, and then today, finally, I was interviewed for a documentary on Deepa Ma, who I spoke about a few weeks ago. I had to postpone it because I had a broken blood vessel in my eye, and it finally healed. And so we were able to have this interview, and I got to remember again, and with a little more detail, the blessing of practicing with Deepa Ma some 40 something years ago, which is amazing. But it also stimulated some further reflections about practice, and I thought I would share some of them tonight. Just for those of you who didn't hear me talk about Deepa Ma the other night, I'll just review a little bit of the vignette that I shared with this documentarian, I guess that's what you call them, filmmaker. The way she found me is that I had been interviewed once before for a book that had been written on Deepa Ma. And I had told a little story in the book about the retreat, one of the long retreats that I sat with her back in 1984. And I was also with her in 1980 at the same 3-month retreat at Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts. And that was the second 3-month retreat I did, I did 1979, 1980, and then I went again in 1984, and she happened to be in residence again. And that time I got to work with her very closely. But the first 2 times that I did the long retreats, I was happy, my mind quieted down. I just dropped into the joy of the practice, and my faith was bright, and everything about it was really inspiring and confidence building. But this particular time that I was with Deepa Ma, from the moment I arrived at the retreat, I started crying. And I think I cried every day for 3 months. And I had periods that were very sublime, periods where I could sit for hours without much pain. And then it would be followed reliably by not being able to sit more than 5 minutes without wanting to jump out of my skin. Felt like my whole system was breaking apart. And I did consult with many teachers over the years about what is that experience that comes in the unfolding of meditation, where you feel like you're being torn apart, internal achiness. And someone said it's more prominent for the character type of the three common character types: the greed type, the aversive type, and the deluded type. These are the three character types that reflect what the Buddha described as the three poisons, or the three causes of suffering: greed, hatred, and delusion. Well, of those three types, I'm what would be called the greed or grasping type. And greed types, as the identity gets coagulated, our identity gets formed repeatedly around things we want to happen. And of course, I think our whole culture is a greed culture. This is the culture that is most like one of the planes of existence that's in the Buddhist cosmology called the plane of the hungry ghost. I think I've talked about that recently. And the plane of the hungry ghost, it's a metaphor, and some would say it's literal, but hungry ghosts are those beings with little mouths and huge stomachs that can't be satisfied. And that our culture encourages that kind of ceaseless desire. When one starts to unwind in the depth of silence, as we start to peel the onion, the grasping mind starts to break open, and we open through, one of the ways of talking about it is we open through lots of different tension, lots of different internal holding. And in my case, I just had an enormous amount of restlessness and an internal achiness. And that literally went on for 4 or 5 years, but I had momentary breakthroughs. And one of them was with Deepa Ma, who felt some mercy for my experience, because I felt so many times when I practiced with her that I wanted to roll up my mat and go home. And yet I kept going because I had a lot of faith in the practice. It had given me a lot, and it had built over the years. But my faith was waning a little bit. And she, in her encouragement, she took my hand in an interview. And I know I just told this story, but some of you, not the same people, are here. She caressed my hand and she looked me in the eyes and she said, if you stay with this experience, if you just keep going, you will earn great merit. And she gave me such a transmission of love and confidence that I just went right back to my cushion, and my mind just really opened up and started going through a sequence of experiences that really freed me from certain kinds of confusion. I don't want to elaborate too much on that tonight. But when one has an awakening, an opening, a seeing in a different way, at least in the Theravada tradition, the tradition of Southern Buddha, the Southeast Asia, in the Theravada tradition, it's said that those openings come in cycles. They come in stages. And once you've had some kind of experience like that, just as any time we have an experience where something lets go or we open, our mind sees very clearly for a while, and then we revert in a way. And it's understood in these teachings that one goes back to a more gross perception of reality. We just go back to the ordinary, and then repeat the cycle. If we still have the impulse to practice more, we just keep growing in our understanding. And I clearly was not complete with my journey. In some ways, we're never complete with our journey. Our journey is as long as we are in existence. So I kept practicing, and soon after that, I began to sit with a teacher named U Pandita Sayadaw. And he really came back to me today, my time with him, I followed him to retreats all over and went to Burma and spent months with him in Burma. And in that time with him, the same process of sitting very quietly for long periods of time, followed by just an intense sense of internal achiness and restlessness. But somewhere about 4 years into my journey with U Pandita, and how I actually continued still in some ways blows my mind that I had the faith to keep going. But somewhere in that internal journey, during a sitting, during a long practice period, I think this was in Burma, and I was a couple months into this unraveling, I was experiencing that same internal achiness. I also had, along with that, at this particular retreat, I had, in addition to that achiness, I had nausea from morning until night. Makes it sound really exciting to practice. But on the other hand, the practice period in Burma ended up being one of the most interesting and illuminating and joyous practice periods of my life. So in some ways you have to do it to understand why it would be so satisfying, even though it was so difficult. But anyway, once I was in the middle of this retreat, experiencing that internal achiness, things getting very microscopic, very, very moment to moment, because our mind, when it has continuous mindfulness, it becomes laser-like and it starts picking up little mind moments. It starts breaking apart our usual sense of solidity and identity. But this is where I saw delusion. But when you see delusion, it's wisdom. And just to back up a little bit, I'm reading right now little excerpts from a teacher named Soko Morinaga. I don't know how many of you have read the work of this monk, but the title of the book is The Extent of My Own Stupidity. And a lot of what we realize along the line in practice is the extent of our stupidity. And it is a common Zen practice to get together with your practitioners, and they do a formal practice called confessing your delusions. And so basically confessing the extent to your own stupidity. So I've been reading that, and I was thinking about this today, and I was right in the middle of that little microscopic moment. And across the screen of my mind, noticing this internal achiness, almost in neon, a little mind moment, a little thought form crossed my mind that said, "You are looking for a pleasant experience." And that moment of seeing what I had probably been practicing for lifetimes, seeing that impulse to look for a pleasant experience, seeing that in such vivid detail, the whole structure of all that achiness and restlessness evaporated completely. And it really has never come back in that extent that it carried on for years. And I would say most of us in our conventional life, in some form or another, is looking for a pleasant experience. And looking for a pleasant experience is what the Buddha called tanha, or thirst. It is a hindrance to freedom. It colors the mind and in a way that experience of real time, whatever it is that's happening, is colored with the experience of lack, of insufficiency. And one of the ways that I'll confess my own stupidity tonight, and my wife urged me to do this because, because she doesn't want me to give the impression I'm such a high and mighty guru. But actually, she was the one that brought it to my attention first about herself. She was saying that she doesn't want to just get through the week. And she heard me say, after she had said that, she heard me say in 2 or 3 different conversations that we were having, I just need to get through this day. I just need to get through this hour. And in some way, those seemingly innocent little lines, little thoughts put into words, put into conversation, reinforce a feeling that I cannot actually be free, relaxed, at ease right now, and that it must be postponed until I get through the week. And it's done so easily and so casually. And sadly, it causes us in so many ways to postpone a feeling of home, a feeling of freedom. And it works with waiting for the bell to ring at the end of the sitting. Just curious, those of you who are on camera, how many of you were waiting for the gong to go off at the end of the sitting? Thanks, Evan. Appreciate your hand. Margot, Frank, Rhonda, Scott.
If I'd known there was a gong, I would have waited.
Oh, you didn't know it was a gong.
Oh, Howie, I was thinking, my, this is a long, long, long sit. And finally, I opened my eyes and saw that you were talking away. My cat had muted the computer while I was sitting. And so I didn't realize it was over.
Well, oh, I see. I think I had done a whole piece of instruction with the computer muted as well. So you may not have heard me because I was muted. But nevertheless, it's why I asked you, are you just getting through this sitting? Are you waiting for the bell to ring? Are you waiting for the end of the evening? Were you waiting for the Dharma talk? Were you waiting, this hoping, this expecting, this associating our happiness, this misplaced faith in this future that never arrives, is something that we can notice. We can actually resolve to notice, like neon, how many times a day this wanting mind rises into our mind. The Buddha knew the power, the seductive power of tanha, of thirst, of craving, and all the subtle ways that it shows up. He actually said, according to it seems cross-culturally, every rendition of the Four Noble Truths, the second truth, the cause of mental distress, cause of suffering, is essentially craving for sense experience, craving for becoming, craving for non-becoming. Now, I don't want to elaborate too much on the Four Noble Truths tonight, but that movement of the mind toward more, toward what's next, toward getting somewhere, toward becoming someone, our identity formation is so much about going. And as I've read so many times in the past, the wonderfully humorous passage from what's his name? It was attributed to George Carlin, but his name was Miller, Larry Miller. And Larry Miller writes about a kind of craving for becoming. And I'll read it for those of you who've never heard this before. Do you realize that the only time in our lives when we like to get old is when we're kids? If you're less than 10 years old, you're so excited about aging that you think in fractions. How old are you? I'm 4.5. You're never 36.5. You're 4.5 going on 5. That's the key. You get into your teens and now they can't hold you back. You jump to the next number or even a few ahead. How old are you? I'm going to be 16. You could be 13, but hey, you're going to be 16. And then the greatest day of your life, you become 21. Even the words sound like a ceremony. You become 21. Yes. But then you turn 30. Ooh, what happened there? Makes you sound like bad milk. He turned. We had to throw him out. There's no fun now. You're just a sour dumpling. What's wrong? What changed? You become 21, you turn 30, you're pushing 40. Whoa, put on the brakes. It's all slipping away. Before you know it, you reach 50 and your dreams are gone. But wait, you make it to 60. You didn't think you would. You become 21, turn 30, push 40, reach 50, make it to 60. You've built up so much speed that you hit 70. After that, it's a day-by-day thing. You hit Wednesday. You get into your 80s and every day is a complete cycle. You hit lunch, you turn 4:30, you reach bedtime, and it doesn't end there. Into your 90s, you start going backwards. I was just 92. Then a strange thing happens. If you make it over 100, you become a little kid again. I'm 100.5. May we all make it to a healthy 100.5. So it may seem innocuous and humorous, but the way our mind orients itself toward future, toward what doesn't really even exist except as a thought. Even though it's innocent, even though it's universal, it deprives us. This habit of mind, unrecognized, deprives us of a peace and freedom, a real peace that is our natural state. The one that we recognize when that wanting mind evaporates. So it's said that the identity is really made up of 5, what are called the 5 aggregates, the 5 Skandas. And actually, if you look at the constituent parts of any moment, there's really no self there. There's just contact, there's feeling, there's perception, there's mental formations, and there's consciousness. And these 5 Skandas, these 5 aggregates, are literally appearing and disappearing moment to moment. Depending on what the mental formation is, and depending on perception, which is based on memory, in other words, whatever mental formation is, whatever you frequently think about and dwell upon, whatever you're conditioned to think. And one of the most common mental formation is what's considered an unwholesome mental formation, that is craving, wanting. And because of perception, that and the proximity of our ability to see what we're doing most of the time, that wanting gets mixed in with what's called wrong view. It's called avidya or ignorance. Wrong view and wanting then coagulate into a misperception of who we are. And all of a sudden, we think of ourselves as a being with lack, a being who needs something, who wants something, who hopes for something, who's getting through something, who's not there yet. You practice that over and over and over, wrong view with that mental formation, that mental quality of wanting, and there's tension that builds. And that tension that builds makes us feel like we're all alone, separate from the flow of our life. Not quite there yet. And so it's easy to just go about your day and feel like, okay, this is not so great. And it'll be better when I get through this, it'll be better when the relationship gets worked out, kids are off to school, married, or they get their sexual identity straight, they get their whatever it is that is created in our mind as a condition for well-being, condition for relief, is a trick. We put a misplaced faith in things that don't make us any happier. We do, though, fulfilling getting through the week, solving problems, bell ringing. We do innocently. The reason I say innocent is we get there's a little hit of dopamine, a little hit of pleasure, a little hit of relief each time we fulfill a task. Each time the week ends, there's but we think that it's because the week ended that we feel better. We think because my eye stopped bleeding that we feel better. What really brings us the relief is that we're no longer getting through. We're no longer waiting, no longer wanting, no longer associating our happiness with what's next. So practice itself helps us step out of this cycle of misplaced faith, this cycle of building the identity of the one who has lack. It does it all by itself, in a way. Just the more we're immersed in real time, more there is a feeling of, I don't need anything right now. I don't need anything. That home is where I am. Whatever I'm experiencing is the right experience. That gets reinforced. It's self-reinforcing on one hand. The other hand, we have to still face the effects of literally lifetimes of conditioning, lifetimes of being fooled by the extent of our own stupidity, lifetimes of being told in so many ways that the best is yet to come. I always go back to the words of Alan Watts. I know I need some new material, but this is tried and true. He says that when we make music, we don't do it in order to reach a certain point, such as the end of the composition. If that were the purpose of music, obviously the fastest players would be the best. We're not dancing. When we're dancing, we're not trying to or aiming to arrive at a particular place on the floor as in taking a journey. When we dance, the journey itself is the point. When we play music, the playing itself is the point. Exactly the same thing is true of meditation and our life. Meditation is the discovery that the point of life is always arrived at in the immediate moment. So if you meditate for an ulterior motive, that is to improve your mind, improve your character, to be more efficient in life, you've got your eye on the future and you're not really meditating. Future is a concept. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as tomorrow. There never will be, because time is always now. That's one of the things we discover when we stop talking to ourselves and stop thinking so much. We find that there is only a present, only an eternal now. So one meditates for the enjoyment of it. I would interpose that the essential principle is that meditation can be fun. It's not something you do as a grim duty to get through. I'll add that. You do it because meditation, when correctly done, has nothing to do with all that. It's kind of digging the present, kind of grooving with the eternal now. Brings us to a state of peace where we can understand that the point of life, place where it's at, is simply here and now. Looking. Robert Hall says, I walk upstairs, I walk downstairs, wander into the kitchen, look through a doorway into the living room with all its books and oriental carpets, but I can't find the point of it at all, can't reach into what I'm looking for until I sit down in the corner, pull my blanket over my head, close my eyes, look into the interior rooms, listen for what is moving in there. And again, be amazed that there's a river, constant, uncreated, flowing, announcing itself with the sound of life everlasting, bursting into this wrinkled brain substance, translating itself into muscle, bone, fat, connective tissue, and dreams. When I bathe in that immediacy, I never have to search for anything again. Now part of the delusion is we think that we have to go on retreat to have that experience. We need to come to Sangha for that experience. But that experience is waiting. It's so close. It's so easy in a way. So wondrous, the Tibetans say. So vast. And so we have to not only feel that self-evident sense of satisfaction of being present, but part of our practice is to notice and use all those moments of delusion as our manure, as our fertilizer of awakening. Like notice, it's exciting to see that my mind, or have my wife reflect back to me that I'm just trying to get through the day. It's exciting to wake up out of that dream. It's exciting to notice that I'm looking for some sweet experience. And it's exciting to then drop into my body and notice the tension that comes. the tension that's there when I'm in a state of waiting, when I'm in a state of wanting. When I'm mistakenly thinking, I can actually find more happiness at another place, another time. I often, whenever I talk about finding happiness in this world of ever-changing conditions, for some reason, I'm always drawn to this story that someone, a monk, sent me a postcard from Burma when he was practicing in Burma, a friend who had ordained as a monk. And in this little postcard, he told the story of this monk who had been in a cave on the island of Koh Phangan in Thailand. And he'd been an American person who'd been practicing there, and he had contracted dengue fever and died. And when they found his body in the cave, they saw inscribed on the walls of the cave, "Oh, what a joy to know there is no happiness in this world. Be happy." Of course, what he meant was there's no lasting happiness in the changing conditions. But if we stop looking for happiness in changing conditions, our mind settles naturally back into the natural happiness of being conscious. Natural happiness of being aware. A mind free of craving, free of condemning. But we have to wake up to the conditioning of craving and condemning. We have to be able to confess to ourselves the extent of our stupidity. And that's fun. That's fun. This is about thirst, tanha, craving. Tanha, meaning thirst, is not a chosen kind of desire. It's a reflex. It's the desire to pull something in and feed on it. Desire that's never satisfied because it shifts from one sense base to another, from one emotional need to the next, from one sense achievement to another goal. It's the desire that comes from a black hole of need, however small and manageable that need is. The Buddha said that regardless of its specific topics, this thirst relates to three channels: sense craving, craving to be something, to unite with an experience, craving to be nothing or to dissociate from an experience. So again, the second noble truth. Fortunately, he didn't stop with that truth. He said in the third truth, there's an end to this. One can experience the cessation of this waiting, this hoping, this wanting, this thirst to join, this thirst to disassociate from. There's an end to it. And finally, there's a path to the end of it. It's not just philosophical. Where the rubber meets the road it's tonight. When your mind is not trying to get through this, or if it is trying to get through this, you notice it. Oh, there's the mind that's trying to get through this talk. But it's right now. Noticing when there's a presence of craving, noticing when there's an absence of it. And enjoy how close that cessation is. how that cessation took no effort. Space is there, peace is there. So I think that this is a good time to end with the tried and true words of Gandan Rinpoche. His poem or spontaneous song entitled Free and Easy. Happiness cannot be found through great effort and willpower, but is already present in open relaxation and letting go. Don't strain yourself. There's nothing to do or to undo. Whatever momentarily arises in the body-mind has no real importance at all and has little reality whatsoever. So why identify with, become attached to it, passing judgment upon it and ourselves? Far better to simply let the entire game happen on its own, springing up and falling back like waves, without changing or manipulating anything. And notice how everything vanishes and reappears magically again and again, time without end. Only our searching for happiness prevents us from seeing it. It's like a vivid rainbow which you pursue without ever catching, or a dog chasing its own tail. Although peace and happiness do not exist as an actual thing or place, it's always available and accompanies you every instant. Don't believe in the reality of good and bad experiences. They are like today's ephemeral weather, like rainbows in the sky. Wanting to grasp the ungraspable, you exhaust yourself in vain. As soon as you open, relax this tight fist of grasping. Infinite space is there, open, inviting, comfortable. So make use of this spaciousness, this freedom and natural ease. Don't search any further. Don't go into the tangled jungle looking for the great awakened elephant who is already resting quietly at home in front of your own fireplace. Nothing to do or to undo, nothing to force, nothing to want, and nothing missing. Emaho, marvelous. Everything unfolds by itself. Thank you for listening. While I was reading that, I remembered there was one last thing I wanted to read tonight. If I can find it on the, I think it's right here. There is a teacher who is quite ill named Jeff Foster, who's very quotable. And he's in some kind of a treatment center in Germany, and his story is just awful. But he has been a really accessible teacher with his writings. And one of the things that I noticed when I heard about his story, and I went on the internet this evening to look at his, look to find out about him, I came upon many of his readings on Goodreads. And one of them that struck me apropos of tonight's topic was a very simple passage that I will end with, besides the happiness that is from Gandan Rinpoche. I'll leave you with this. This moment is not life waiting to happen. Not goals waiting to be achieved, words waiting to be spoken, connections waiting to be made, regrets waiting to evaporate, aliveness waiting to be felt, enlightenment waiting to be gained. No, nothing is waiting. This is it. This moment is life. So let us really take that to heart. This is someone who's on the precipice of not being alive, who's quite ill, and he's quite young actually. but his teaching is just right on. Seize the moment, carpus diem. You've heard it all before, but you hear it again. So let's just sit quietly for a moment. And before we say goodnight to each other, let's just consider any of the blessings that have come to us in any moment where we stopped looking ahead and stopped looking back. Stop postponing. And whatever fruit, whatever fragrance, whatever goodness has arisen from our being able to share together and having the great good fortune of being able to come together and share while so many people can't even gather, even on the internet. We take all the goodness, all the blessings, and we offer them to everyone in this world in need, including ourselves. A salve for all hearts, a wish for everyone to have happiness and peace and safety and ease and health, and a deep wish that our actions of body, speech, and mind are the cause of more happiness in this world. Starting with ourselves. Be that anchor, that refuge of sufficiency, of wholeness, that others can find shade, find kindness, find non-reactivity. May all beings benefit by our practice. Thank you. If you don't mind giving Mary a couple moments to share any announcements, and then we'll, as soon as she's finished, we'll all say goodnight to each other, and hopefully you'll